Good afternoon, everybody. This is the fourth edition of Wind Energy Academy Latvia, and this time it's dedicated to the first layout of wind farms. And we've given this catchy title, First Layout of Wind Farms Never Stands Forever. And I think you all know what it means. It means that it's a changing process, and this is exactly what we will be delving into. So the first layout and why it is the beginning of a very complex process. We will address the critical steps and considerations that developers need to take into account. And here with me today is Oskars, Beikulis, and Gatis Vītols, but I will let them introduce themselves, tell who they are and what they do, and they will talk more about the process, and we will structure it in a way that it's more like a conversation between somebody who's a practical, hands-on developer and environmental expert. And with this, sorry, I forgot to mention so that you have the possibility to ask questions in the Q&A section, or is it called chat section? We will address the questions either as we go or then as towards the end of the presentations. Okay, with this, my part is over.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Lasma already presented, my name is Oskars Beikulis, and already for quite many years we are dealing with permitting process of different wind farms, so we have a bit of experience in topic, what means like a first layout, what means last layout, and what are the key issues to take into account when planning a wind farm layout from beginning to the end of the process.
I'm a wind energy project developer for the last 5 years. Started the first wind project in 2019, and so far we have been working with several projects, and three of the projects have EIA approval. Two of them have the full EIA, and one has the short EIA according to this new legislation. And the total approved power is approximately 230 megawatts. And now we are in the next stage, basically developing the full technical projects. And together with Oskars, we will share today the experience about the very initial stage, which is basically the EIA stage and the layout development of the wind energy project.
I will put on my presentation. I hope that everyone can see the presentation. Okay, perfect. Gatis, before we start our conversation and discussion today, I would like to have a question to you, a curious question to you. You already mentioned that you have finished permitting process of a few wind farms. Have you ever finished the process with the layout what you started at the beginning?
Never. It has been always quite dynamic process until the last, I would say, even during the full technical project development, there are still some minor changes. So it's always quite a dynamic process.
What we observed in a lot of other projects too, that initial layout always is changed, but there are a couple of things what to take into account when we are to make it less harmful to project and to get better flexibility in any next step of wind farm planning. So, and we will try to go through these key aspects today. We have a short presentation. But just before we start, I would like to show like two maps, both from Gatis project, where in one map we can see like initial layout that was at the beginning of permitting process. Here on the map you can see like with these violet points, these are planned wind turbines. And the next map will be approved layout that is at the end of permitting process. And as you can see, it is completely different. Gatis, can you tell me shortly what was the key aspects that due to what you have changed the layout in this project?
Yes, so the first picture was actually from the initial EAA presentation in the 2019, and this layout which you can see right now is actually where we already have the construction permits, basically the final layout. Several. It's so it was because we started in 2019. The legislation changed. There was introduction of bigger distance from the households. There is also a change in legislation which allowed to put as the turbines in the forests. There were some let's say neighbors or people who were really against here on the left side, which we canceled due to basically the protests of the people, and quite a significant effect was also from the bird studies, and we had to cancel several locations due to the bird studies. So basically, in short summary, these are the main aspects which gave the biggest changes in the layout.
So actually, this is almost everything what we are going to talk about today. When we are talking about the first layout and maybe the last layout, we have split our discussion on like four main topics, what we should take into account when we are talking about the wind farm planning. So it's one of the topics is like a key considerations regarding a layout, and not just the layout, but site selection for wind farm development. Another thing is what is the same importance, it's economical aspects. Then we have a topic regarding environmental factors, or at least key environmental factors that should be taken into account when planning a layout. And then we have legal and social factors that should be taken into account. But okay, if we can start and get into our discussions and regarding key considerations, I would like to highlight a couple of things. Here, mostly a layout of or micro sitting of specific wind farms in a wind farm area, but regarding selection of site for wind farm. And I assume that majority of you knows that we have some requirements in regulation regarding setback distances from residential houses. We have limitations to develop wind farms in specially protected areas or Natura 2000 areas. This is something what usually people are taking into account when selecting site. At the same time, we have a couple of things that we quite often see that are missing in initial plan. And I would like to highlight a couple of documents that are still quite important. One of the things is that quite often we see that developers are looking in special plans or local plans of municipality when selecting a site, but actually these plans are just giving regulations for construction. And in many cases, we have seen that developers forget about higher level planning documents in municipalities that is called Sustainable Development Strategy. It's high level political document which usually doesn't give any detailed information on the sites where to plan or not to plan wind farms. But at the same time, these documents contain a couple of important information that might reduce in some problems in the later stages of planning. For example, majority of these sustainable development strategies contain information about or restrictions related to landscape protection, protection of cultural heritage, and based on our experience, it's always in permitting processes, we always have discussions, can you plan a wind farm in areas where municipality has defined that it's area for landscape protection. And of course, another important thing, when we go down from high-level political documents, we have a lot of regulations in special plans or local plans of municipalities. And in quite many cases, when selecting a site, we are just looking to some aspects that are related to, is the wind farm construction allowed in this area or not allowed? But in many cases, we are missing significant small significant things like considering that majority of spatial planning documents are developed maybe 5-10 years ago. There is still a lot of old regulation inside plans of municipalities what can have limitations for wind farm development afterwards. And another important thing regarding key considerations, what I would like to highlight is our suggestion is to start to early communication with several institutions, where I believe that majority of you have seen new map with restrictions defined by Ministry of Defense. At the same time, we have some requirements from National Air Navigation Service Provider. So these are definitely institutions where we suggest to start discussions with them about possibilities to develop a wind farm in very early stage. Because in quite many cases, their answer won't be related just to location of one or another specific wind turbine, but regarding a wind farm in specific area in general. Garis, I believe that you have a lot of comments regarding the key considerations, what you should take into account when planning a wind farm area, not a layout, but wind farm site for wind farm selection.
Yes, I think there's one more major component, which is actually the distance from the AST line, so where you can actually connect, which also quite impacts the layout because you can't go too far away. So it's also quite crucial point. But regarding the planning documents, based on our experience, yes, that is true that we still face a challenge with the, let's say, old territory planning documents. Which are majority more than 10 years old and didn't include the latest legislation changes which were introduced quite recently. For example, like the construction in the forests, there are only few municipalities which have included this in their territory planning, which means that it's how to say, you should do like either the local planning or detailed planning procedure to allow the construction in the forest area. So it's and if you foreseen that at the very beginning, then it's okay, because then you can do it in parallel to other processes. But if you are at the end, it takes additionally like 9 to 12 months, and it can delay the whole project. So, but hopefully that will change, because I think by the end of this year, most of the municipalities have to update their planning documents, and maybe they will include the newest legislation there, and it won't be a problem in the future. Regarding this, your comment about these strategic documents, I think also my experience was that I, as a typical developer, did not pay so much attention to these documents, and that's why actually Oskars helped us and actually pointed out some of the issues which were there. But from our experience, that has these have not been the red flags. So. My comment regarding maybe the Civil Aviation Agency and Ministry of Defense is that with the regarding Ministry of Defense, there is a map right now, so it gives some kind of information, like let's say the probability, if you're in the green zone, that there's very high probability that there won't be like any issues. If you're in the yellow zone, then it's they will evaluate the project case by case and decide if there needs to be some additional measures taken, or they can even deny this wind park. So and I think this should be done in quite early stage. Regarding the Civil Aviation Agency, from our experience, it's the process in several steps. Initial step, you should say inquire in general what is the situation there, let's say with the impact on the radars, and in the next step, if there is, let's say if they assume that there is impact on some radars or some let's say navigation tools which they have, then you need to do this, let's say, very detailed analysis. And this detailed analysis should be done, I think, already at the late stage of the project, when you can actually fix the positions. Because for the Civil Aviation Agency and for the LGS, they need to be certain that these locations are fixed, and basically it should be already at the very late stage. So it's like initially you should understand if there are like any red flags, and then provide them information, or already very detailed information about the location, about the height of the turbines, in later in the stage, when you have gone through all the other processes, and can say for, let's say, 95% certainty that this will be the final layout of the turbines.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that sounds like some kind of roadmap that is important for selection of site, but we should move forward and touch one quite important thing regarding economical aspects. And here we would like to touch topics like distances from wind turbine to wind turbine, like size of wind turbines, like analysis of wind speeds. That is quite important to have a successful project at the end of the day. And here I would like to ask a question to Gatis, taking into account that I think that today, like wind turbine models are changing more often than iPhones. How important it was in your projects, and how important you think it's in general to like start layout planning in a way that you already know what kind of wind turbines you are going to build at the end of the process.
So this, let's say, the decision about the final turbines, it's I would say it comes very, very late at the overall process, from my experience, and because the models are changing. For example, in one project we introduced the Siemens Gamesa, but Siemens Gamesa is not delivering the turbines, so actually then we need to change. So that's an issue. But from my experience, when we started the projects, we actually didn't take into account that the future turbines might be so big, and actually, let's say, our kind of mistake was that maybe we placed the turbines too close to each other. And now when the models are coming bigger, when we are doing this, let's say, wake effect, these calculations based on the newest models, we see that we have to actually cancel some of the locations due to this loss which comes from the wake effect. So this is one of the things which we didn't consider, let's say, five years ago when we started. We just played them too close. That is one of the, let's say, things which you need to take into account, that maybe the distances between the turbines should be bigger, because there are quite big limitations of how free you are to move them around the land plots because of different let's say these limitations. For example, the houses, the neighboring land plots, etc., etc. And sometimes, yeah, these are the, let's say, hard decisions to cancel the location due to the wake effects, and maybe even to decrease the size of the park. Regarding the wind speeds, so we have been working in several locations in Latvia, and this has not been like in let's say the critical aspect of the projects, and it has been more about permitting and where we can do the project, and the wind speed has been always like let's say one of the it is important for the overall, let's say, calculations of the financial models, but that has not been the thing that how we have started. Because okay, you can choose the locations near Ventspils and Liepāja, but if you can't develop due to the maybe not very welcome municipality or due to some other restrictions, then you don't have the wind park, and then maybe you build it in more in onshore, like in you know, Salvus, Talsi, or Kuldīga. And yeah, these are my comments.
Okay, if I can add a couple of remarks here regarding what is important, really important in the layout planning, and what we have observed in like recent years dealing with a lot of permitting processes for wind farms. My suggestion would, in many cases, we have observed that developers, when they select wind farm areas, they are trying to pull it completely with wind turbines, trying to plan a lot of as much wind turbines as it's possible to plan. And Gatis already mentioned that size of wind turbines are changing, and that it might have impact on final decisions if at the end of the process you would like to choose a bigger wind turbine. But my suggestion would be to already initially to foresee a bit bigger distances between wind turbines, and it's needed just to have a reasonably low wake effect. We'll talk about it a bit later regarding environmental aspects, like especially protected habitats, birds, and etc. But if you have an option during a permitting phase to move wind turbine, let's say by 100 or 200 meters from initially planned point, without having significant effect on economical aspects, that would be my suggestion for better planning of like a first layout. Because if we plan wind turbines very close to each other, then if we move one wind turbine to whatever reason, unhappy local inhabitant, landscapes, habitats, or whatever reason, then we need to change all layout. And if we have like bigger distances, then we have like a more flexibilities, and just changes of one wind turbine wouldn't have a significant impact on the project in general, and it would allow to save us time. Gatis, would you agree on this?
Yes, I fully agree, but from another aspect, the problem is actually the land availability for the turbines, and usually I think there's few let's say cases where you can have like a big land plot and you are, let's say, very free to move it around. Usually it's more like scarce, let's say, in different locations, smaller land plots, and then you are actually quite limited. So that's like the challenge you need to how to say, tackled. So it's always like one versus another one. So maybe there's one neighbor which gives you the land, but there are only 20 hectares, and you can move it maybe only 60 meters, but you need to move 160 meters, and then you are already on the neighboring land, and the neighbor says, "No, I don't want to have the wind turbine," and then what happens with this? So I think that's also the challenge, and I think that from my experience, it is hard or impossible if these are different landowners to have like a one big piece of land block. So okay, it's not the case with the state forests where was the auction where you can get like the whole land and then you are much more flexibility to change it. But if you are, let's say, going one by one with different landowners, then I think it's also a big challenge, and you are quite limited within the existing land plots. So it's like yeah, it's like a trade-off between
Yeah.
so how hard are you working with the landowners and how much flexibility you want to have in the future? It's like
Yeah, but for those who participated and still consider to participate in state forest auctions, that's actually might be one of quite important topics, not to plan the wind turbines too close to each other and try to get like maybe not so dense layout at the beginning to have a better flexibility during the permitting process. But if we switch from economical aspects to my favorite thing, what is environmental aspects, there is a lot of things to take into account when you plan a layout at the beginning. And based on my experience, actually, environmental aspects or nature aspects are one of the key reasons why wind farm layouts are changed quite often during a permitting process. And a couple of things what are important. I would start from opposite side of the list of like a key points what we have here. We have seen quite a lot of projects where developers are coming just with locations of wind turbines, but it is very important to understand that in many cases, the biggest problem won't be the placement of wind turbine as itself, but the biggest issues will be related to placement of infrastructure, like roads, areas what you need to clean for construction site. And considering that these areas are very huge, and especially if you are planning in a forest areas, then when you tell that you have like a first layout, it actually should mean that you just have not just the points of wind turbines, but you have idea how to access these sites and how to place your construction site. And there are a couple of important things what to take into account in like a first layout planning process. We have quite a lot of data on birds and bats and specially protected habitats, and this information is publicly available. And everyone can take into account this information when planning a layout. But we should understand one thing, that this information is not perfect. And in many cases, you will get a situation when you have most probably perfect layout based on information what you have. But when experts will go outside and they will check a specific areas, they will do like a bird and bat surveys. They will look for habitats and specially protected plant or cryptogenic species. They will discover a lot of new things that will require to change a layout. And here I would like to mention a couple more things what might help you to develop better first layout is, and one of these things when we are talking about wind farm planning in the forest, try to avoid areas with a lot of old forest stands. When I'm talking about old forest stands, I mean 80, maybe 100 plus years. even if you are planning your wind turbine or construction site in a clear-cut area that is adjacent to old forest stands, usually these old forest areas are rich of birds, bats, especially protected plant species that are, and it might have and you might have an issues in permitting stage if you plan your wind turbines very close to these sites. And don't forget about topography, like drainage systems. In Latvia, we have quite a lot of, especially when we are talking about not plains, but with areas with a hilly elevation, we have a lot of wet areas or swamps, and in many cases these are specially protected habitats, or there will be significant impact even if you plan your road very close to it due to melioration, like a network that you need to develop. And yeah, a lot of information regarding nature things or environmental factors you know before or can get before you plan a layout, but this is one of the important things that definitely will change your layout several times. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, from the list which we have here, the most, you're right, Oskars, the most significant effect on the layout has been from the birds. It's definitely the birds. Regarding the bats, in my personal experience, I have not, due to the bats, changed the layout, so it has not had the, let's say, significant effect, but the birds, definitely, due to the birds, we have decrease the project size, change the locations, and introduce some kind of mechanisms, let's say compensatory mechanisms, etc., etc. So it has been the most difficult, and I would say also the longest part in the whole EAA has been the birds. And I think it still is for the new projects being developed right now. Regarding the biotopes, it has had effect on the cable roads, but not on the turbine placement itself. But on the cable roads, yes, due to that, we have changed the initially planned layout because the biotope expert has found some, let's say, restrictions, and he had to change the road. So, and it happens quite often. So, let's say from the initially planned layout, we can cable layout, we can, let's say, we can remain with approximately 80 to 90% because maybe, let's say, 10 to 20% is changed due to this findings. And the thing is that maybe one finding, which is somewhere in some local area, I think impacts the layout in other locations because of some owners, etc., etc. Regarding topography, yes, also due to topography, we also had to change some of the locations. Let's say when it, let's say, was the location was EIA approved, but we received the let's say requirements from the VTG manufacturer, we understood that we cannot have so straight line, and we had basically to cancel the location. So, and basically you should ask from the VTG manufacturers initially, let's say, all the requirements, so you can actually fit in these, let's say, long straight roads in necessary evaluation, and there are no like big slopes, and because otherwise you just can't have it built.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I would suggest here one more very important thing. When you start like a planning of your first layout for wind farm, I think that here quite important thing is pre-feasibility study to understand actually to ask when you have selected a potential site, even before you did like a detailed layout planning, it's quite important to ask like nature experts their initial opinion regarding risks in specific site regarding, especially when we are talking about birds, because here we are not talking just about the wind farm area as itself or potential wind farm area, but we are talking about everything that is in surrounding areas of wind farm. So if you have selected the area close to the big water bodies like lakes or rivers, you should expect that you might have a problems with some species of birds of prey. If you move to areas that are important for migratory birds, then you might have problems with requirements to shut down a wind farm during a migration season. And in many cases, our bird and habitat experts have these key might give these key comments on wind farm area in general. So I would suggest to you to use this possibility and do pre-feasibility studies in a very early stage when you select site, because in my experience we had quite many projects where this part of initial or pre-feasibility study on a nature perspective was missing, and due to that reason, in later stage wind farm development was cancelled. Yeah, and if I can, one of the things what many developers like to move out their wind farms from the forest areas, and this is like a typical suggestion from many nature experts, and try to find some agricultural lands, then here one important message would be try to avoid grasslands. If it's like a croplands, then it's not a huge, usually it's not a huge issue, but if you will plant the wind turbines on a grasslands, then you can expect potentially significant problems, both from habitat perspective and birds perspective, because for many birds of prey, grasslands are main feeding areas. And if you have a wind farm in such places, then it definitely will require extra activities for mitigation of these impacts, or even compensation of these impacts. And last but not least, I think one of the most important topics from GATT's perspective regarding building agreements, human factors, how much this one impacts the layout of your wind farms, GATT, in your experience?
I would say it's actually it's the most significant part is actually the construction rights agreements, because this is like basically the basis where you are constructing, and yes, there are different let's say opinions from the people. There are the people who are, let's say, very welcoming this idea about having the wind turbine on their land plot, and then there are people who don't couldn't want to talk to you and think that you are kind of enemy. So it's the negotiations with the landowners can be something from maybe the fastest case can be maybe like in 1 month we can sign the construction rights agreement, and the slowest has been more than a year or even close to 2 years. So all these negotiations can take quite a time. So it really depends on the persons, and also the situation in the market changes, and then they are hearing that there's some competition. So it's when I started, it was much easier in 2018-20, but now I think it's much more difficult to have these agreements. And yeah, so and for me, this has been always, let's say, the limiting factor of how flexible we are regarding the future changes in the wind farm. So, and usually they have been so limiting that we had to cancel the let's say some of the locations due to other aspects, and we could not move it. So, and because either the neighbor doesn't want it, or yeah, we just can't agree with the landowner, because the requirements are, let's say, too unrealistic. And so this has been let's say at the very basis of the wind farm is actually the CRAs.
Mm-hmm. And if I can have an extra question to you, when usually it's quite often easy to agree on a placement of wind farm, wind turbine as itself, but how it's about infrastructure? This is you cannot get a permit for wind farm if you do not analyze a plan like a layout of infrastructure, roads, cable lines, construction sites. And is it always possible to just to talk with one specific landowner, or you need to split, let's say, construction site of one wind turbine on different land plots? And is it easy to get agreement from landowners who won't have a wind farm but will have just a part of infrastructure?
So in my experience, I don't have the location where the construction is splitting two properties. So it can be two properties, but then it's owned by the same landowner. So we tried, we have tried to avoid the situations where some, let's say, part goes to other property, because then it becomes very complicated. So we usually, I don't even consider these locations. Regarding the infrastructure, the cable, it is a challenge. Therefore, we usually try to use as much as possible the public infrastructure, which is basically the municipality roads, and we try to agree as much as possible with the state forests where it is possible. And then, of course, when it's not possible, then we need to have the agreements with the private landowners. And of course, again, if someone does not agree, and this has been in your critical path, then you have to change maybe 10 other locations, and that's the reality. And then if you change the other locations, then maybe you need to do additional biotop research, because this is in your road, and then you let's say do some work, let's say once more repeatedly, and it's like more or less than kind of constant dynamic ongoing work regarding the cable roads. Regarding the access roads, in my experience, we consider the location feasible when it has, let's say, if there is construction rights agreement, it needs to have also access to the closest either municipality or state forest or state road. So it should come as a package. So basically, there's a construction rights agreement, and then we also try to get these servitude agreements to get the connection to the road. Otherwise, it's not feasible, because the construction rights agreement without the access to the closest road, that just doesn't give you like anything. So I see it more as a package. So the roads has not been such a big issue, because I have chosen mostly the locations which are either connected to the municipality roads, or they are coming more or less with the package with construction rights agreement. But the cables, yes, that is quite a challenge.
Okay, and we have one another interesting topic, what is, I think, quite important in the last few years. That is impact of wind farm on the landscapes. This hasn't been significant issue, I think, 5 years ago, when the first wind farms has been planned in Latvia. But I think, Gatis, correct me if I'm wrong, but in our days, there might have quite a strict requirements from landscape experts how actually you should place your wind turbines to make them look nice. And this might be very important in a couple of areas where municipalities consider that landscape protection is important. And I think it was the last year or beginning of this year when there was a document that defined a nationally important landscapes in Latvia. So these areas might be, or proximity of these areas might be even more complicated. Is it so, Gatis, that landscapes are
so yes,
significant?
for the projects which have EAA approved, that has, let's say, never been a big topic to talk about the landscapes, but now the situation has changed. And now it's becoming more and more bigger topic, and I see that the landscapes have, I would say, significant impact on the wind farm layout. Basically, having the same significance level as even the birds. So that's getting even in the special areas which are close to, let's say, some landscape protected areas. But by close, I mean even 5-6 kilometers away is considered close, and it already has some quite significant effects. And what these landscape experts want to see in the wind farm is basically either straight lines or, how they say, some rhythm in the wind farm. And then again, you are quite restricted with the land plots you can work with, and then it's quite a big challenge actually to combine and integrate all the requirements, let's say, from the birds experts and from the landscape experts, and etc. So it is quite a challenging, and I see that's becoming, let's say, more important as it was before, and that's that has definitely changed in the last 5 years. Definitely, it's I can fully agree on that.
Yeah, that's what we have observed in other projects too, and one is like a layout as itself. Another thing, what we have received the comments from a landscape experts, they really like a compact wind farms, so that you plan your all wind turbines in the one site, not trying to make a huge distances between like them just one in one side of I don't know municipality, another in another side of municipality. So this is something what you should definitely take into account when planning a layout. And when we are coming to the end of our GATA discussion, and when we are ready to give the floor to like people who might have questions, I would like to ask like one key final question to you. If we look at the presentation, like four like big factors, which of them for you is more important or most important when you are starting a planning of layout for new wind farm?
So first is as actually you structure in the presentation the first slide, which is basically the key considerations. If in general you can develop the wind farm in that area, so it's basically the distance from the grid line. It's the general, let's say, if there are no nature protected areas like Natura 2000 territories, so or maybe some other nature protected areas. So you have to cancel immediately these areas, and also the micro reserves by the birds, and so and basically all of this is more or less public information, and you can have these layers. And then the next, of course, would be is actually having the construction rights agreements. And so when you have identified the go-to area where you want to build the wind farm, so it's actually having the rights to do the construction there. So that's the next thing, because you theoretically you can do the EAA studies even before, but I have not done it in such a way. So I have always had the construction rights agreements, which give you the right to actually do the construction, and only after I have fixed this, I have started the CAA procedures. And yes, and of course, the negotiations in the landowners, it might have quite a big impact on the layout, because there could be my plan, but then you just go one by one, and you understand that one maybe wants, second doesn't want, and then the third wants 6 instead of 3, and and so it's like always a kind of negotiations. And then of course then the EAA starts, and the EAA all the other aspects are what they are doing is basically they are changing the layout and usually decreasing the initial plant size. So if we, let's say, are planning 25 or 30 turbines, the end result is maybe only 12. So that's the harsh reality.
Okay, so your suggestion is to is at the beginning to plan more than you need.
That's definitely. But of course, and I would also then when I would identify the locations, I would have also, let's say, initial talks with some bird experts to identify some critical areas from the bird perspective. because birds have always been the most let's say limiting factor in this development or EAA process. But now, yes, there are coming some more. Of course, there is very general this defense map, and you should actually start with that one. But I'm not even considering them because you should be either in the yellow or green zone. But yeah, it's how to say multi-layer complex process because there are so many dimensions and with always parallelly constantly some legislation changes, so it is quite a dynamic ongoing process.
Okay. Yeah, that's why the first layout never is the last one. So everyone who is going to develop wind farm should be ready to change it many times. I think that now we should give a floor to the other people to ask the questions.
I think you can stop sharing the presentation.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, it has been very insightful. And I do, before we get to the questions from the audience, I do have a question to Gatis. Has the latest or the upcoming legislation on the payments to the local communities had any impact on how you see the project for the further development of project? Has that played any significant role?
Yes, in my case, I think that even the negotiations about the future law that has helped in developing the project. Of course, it has some effect on the OPEX side of the project, but let's say there are some municipalities which have quite clearly stated that if we don't see any benefit from the project, then you are not welcome here. And maybe they are not so strict as I'm saying right now, but after 1 hour negotiation, you quite clearly understand that that's what they are asking is some kind of benefit. And from our experience, of course, this new law which will be in place, that has definitely helped for the municipalities to make their positive EAA decisions, because this is how they can explain also to the communities that there will be some benefit coming to the municipalities in the payments. So that's that from my perspective, that has helped.
Impact. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
If I can have a short comment on that. Recently, we have participated in after publication of this information, we have participated in quite many public consultations with the local inhabitants. And if I can say that in most cases, we have heard that municipalities are happy about this payment, but in many cases, local inhabitants whose houses will be placed very close to a planned wind farm, they don't consider this as like a huge benefit for them, and they still are against it. So this is something what you should be ready, that municipality says, okay, fine, we get a lot of money, but locals still say, it's not sufficient.
I guess there will always be people who are against wind energy. But okay, let's get to the questions that came in through the registration form. So we've selected two relevant ones. So a shorter one, let's start with the shorter one. What instruments are used for creating layout?
Well, a lot. I would say a lot. Yeah, because first thing is you should have some friendly cartographers that can analyze and make a lot of maps of different layers, showing you some kind of restrictions and etc. Then you have a software for calculation of wake effects. Then you have discussions with the local inhabitants. Then you might have some inputs from different nature experts and etc. Then you have like a municipality planning documents. So as Gatis already mentioned, this is really a multi-layer or multi-instrument task what you should do to get a reasonably good layer.
If the question is more about technical instruments, I would say I'm using on the daily basis WindPro software because it actually has the mapping. You can do also, let's say, these wake effect calculations and draw all the necessary lines. You can integrate different layers, putting on, let's say, the houses and cadastral layers, etc. So I'm, let's say, 95% working with WinPro. Sometimes I need to also use Google Maps, but that's like technical instrument. Maybe the question was meant others, but I'm working mainly with WinPro.
Yeah. I guess it was more technical. That's how I understood it. And then a wider or a question that requires a bit a wider answer. How large buffer zone around this infrastructure should be planned? A, at an early stage by surveying habitat values. B, at a later stage by modeling physical impacts and looking for the alternatives with lowest impact. So about the buffer zones around infrastructure at an early stage and a later stage. Do they differ?
Yeah, if I can have a comment on that. Regarding the physical impacts, I would say that it's buffer zones in majority of cases is not so important, because if you follow the setback distances that are defined by our legislation and move the houses, not houses, but wind turbines 800 meters away from houses, then usually you have like a technological options to build one or another type of wind turbine and not to have physical impacts that exceeds limit values. Regarding habitats, I would say that the research area or buffer zone, it's not very huge. In let's say, if you define the site where you want to construct, and if you add a few tens of meters around it, then it should be sufficient. It's a bit more complicated in the case if you are when we are talking about the wet habitats, wet specially protected habitats, where you might have impact due to construction of new melioration systems. Then we can talk about distance up to 100 meters. Usually not more, but the more I think the largest distances actually are related to birds, when you really need to, because we have some species of birds that have home ranges like 10, 15 kilometers, and if your wind farm is planned, let's say you have white-tailed eagle, I don't know, 10 kilometers away from your wind farm, but you have some fish ponds near your wind farm, then it might not be sufficient.
Yeah. Guts, have you got any comment on that?
I think Oskars perfectly covered that. So basically, if you are talking about some biotopes, then, for example, for the cable road, the experts themselves already, let's say, do this maybe 30 meters on each side research, so it's basically covered. But regarding the most bigger buffer zone, you need to cover around, let's say, the birds, but that's basically technically would mean different. If there are, let's say, the red flags from the birds, it would mean technically another wind farm, because the example which Oskars explained could actually kill the project in that existing location. You should, let's say, have another location, which could be basically a totally new project. So it's so it really depends from which category you are going to. So it can be really small distance, so it can be super large.
Okay, and then we've got the last question. What are your expectations regarding the published map on radars? So the one of Ministry of Defense. Is it expected that yellow zone will be treated as the red one or more as the green one? Your expert take on this?
As far as we know, today yellow zone is as red zone, but on another hand, things take time. When we got like a first issues with civil aviation, not a civil aviation agency, but Latvian air traffic control center in, I think it was 2019. It took 1 year for them to understand what they can allow and what should be limited and etc. But now it's like a perfect like a system, as Gatis already mentioned, that you go to them, they do initial screening, they say, okay, you need a detailed analysis and etc. So things take time.
They do, yeah. Gatis,
Maybe my comment is that I have seen, let's say, different answers, or let's say different answers, or maybe not me directly, but I have heard from other developers in different zones. So I have heard, let's say, approvals in the red zone, and I have heard denials in the yellow zone. So currently, that's quite, how to say, still, although the map is there, it's still case by case evaluated by the Ministry of Defense. And what they are saying is that it's not like a legal document, it's more like the general idea about their internal processes. So it's, I would say it's not like an immediate deal killer if you happen to be, but in the yellow or in the red zone, as Oskar said, it will take some time. But most probably you have better chances if you are in the green zone. So that's because there is a big there is a question about these compensating mechanisms for the yellow zone, about how they will apply it, who will compensate for that, what will be the amounts. Then the negotiations have just started. I think in this industry nothing happens fast, so it can. If we will see some kind of consensus in the industry in 1 year, that would be quite a good result. And that is a challenge. I think if you happen to be in the yellow zone, most probably it will take some time for it to get approved.
And also the map will be reviewed in 2027. So I guess this will also bring more changes to the map. Right. What is there? Yeah, so with this, we're coming to an end. Just a quick addition to what was said before. So the recording and the presentation will be available to all of you who joined today, and the presentation will be sent to those that registered. And yeah, we welcome any feedback about these webinars, because to a large extent the audience should be building the topics, so to say. So if you let us know basically what you'd like to hear in the future, what sort of topics are relevant for you. We do have a structure where we want to move ahead, like in some sort of a sequence of a wind farm development, basically. But yeah, if there's anything specific that you feel we should cover, let us know. And yeah, with this, I thank to the speakers. I think this was, I very much enjoyed this format. I think we should stick to it also in the future. Yes, and let's stay tuned for the next webinars. We don't have a date yet, but we will also go in the summer break, take a little vacation, to say, and we will be back with probably more about environment topics back in September. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.